Welcome. Changing the vent door actuator for a 2006 Ford F-150. This is the King Ranch edition. Pretty sure the King Ranch would have this kind of dash trim. The first thing is put a chalk on the tire, put the car in neutral, get this coin area open, start prying away at the interior. If you don't have a pry bar that's plastic that won't scratch the trims, put a piece of cloth behind a flathead screwdriver and start from the lower side and start prying away. So this is being done one-handed while I'm still filming. So once the lower part is out, I'm going to stop the filming, pull it back, and then I'll start taking the disconnecting the connectors in the back. So all pried back. Now you just have to wiggle this out of the way. Maybe a little more prying. Now off. And there, somebody had mentioned that it is a no-no disconnecting that cable there on the top because that's the indicator for the SRS. I do not think so. However, if there is any opportunity to be able to work without actually pulling the whole entire thing out, your call. And then we need to take these 4 bolts that are on the stereo off. 2 on this side, 2 on the other side. I believe they are 8mm. Okay, so I mentioned wrong earlier when I said these bolts right here on the stereo are 8mm. No, they are 7mm. So I know not everyone is going to have the same kind of tool. Whatever tool you're going to use to remove that 7mm bolts, you may just have a very small ratchet like this with a 7mm socket. I just realized that I got a Blue Power Cornwell set of small sockets, which are a quarter inch that I'm going to be using. Fortunately for me, I'm going to be using a driver to do that. It's a matter of speed in getting things done one-handed. I'm going to try and remove this so I don't lose this. I'm going to leave it on there. I'm going this one. Actually, I should be going counter clockwise. I don't want to lose any of those. I'll use a magnet to pull it back out and get this last one out. So because I'm using one-handed, I'm going to go off screen again to remove those 4. Okay, all 4 bolts out. Now it's time to tug the stereo outward and remove the connector on the back of the stereo. So depending on the option you have in your vehicle, the inside of here might look different. I'm just going to pull the stereo out and let it sit down a little so I can take the connectors out and see what is behind there. So this is where the part would have been. You can see one of the bolts that holds it down is actually broken off of the old one, and the plug is just hanging there, so there's no old one to remove. So here's the replacement part. So having just gotten this truck, the owner actually had the replacement part already purchased and just gave it to me. So apparently he had already removed the old one out of it. So I'm gonna assume that it goes in this way. As you can see, this cross air on this one will mate onto this to kind of align it, and then it'll plug in there, and this shaft will drop into the hole on the bottom right there in the center, if you can see that far with the camera right there. All right, let's try it. Since there wasn't an old one to remove, I thought I'll save you some time in showing you a little bit of a way to maneuver this into this tight space. here. If you can see, I'm trying to do this one-handed. I still have enough light shining here. Let's see. Okay, so I will hold the part like so, and then just try and get it to this side of this thing, because you want that to go in and then into that space, and then just kind of push on the bottom of this and maneuver this into space before now trying to fit it into the hole where that is supposed to go. So let's maneuver this. So I feel I should remove these two bolts and get this tray off, but that depends on your truck. You may not have this feature, but this will give me access from above, and that just slides out and then up. Sometimes you discover some things by accident. Okay, you see I've been jerry-rigging this to try and file that little wall down so that I can actually access the hole that the vent actuator goes into. Well, while doing that and struggling to try and turn the actuator to fit into the groove, that shaft separated from the part. So maybe this is a very good chance. I'm going to pull this out and then put the groove in and see if I can sit the actuator on top of it. So now the part, after some little dance and play, is properly in place. It is now time to put the bolts back on there to tie them down on the three spots. So the 8mm head bolts. With the glove compartment down, of course, glove compartment, you open it, depress the side of it, and it falls down. Now let's look here to see what we have to deal with. So there's your actuator in place, sitting up here. Yeah, you can see that far. Now the third bolt, 8mm head bolt, has to go way out there in the back. It's gonna be a lot of maneuvering around the wiring harness to get it. If you're like me, fat fingers through there and not drop that 8mm head bolt. And I would suggest at this point that a ratcheting 8mm wrench, a tiny one, will be very helpful here, but you make do with what you have. But first, let's start the bolt. There, got the second bolt on there. Now I'm gonna do some hand tightening before I get a wrench on there. Well, there's no point looking at the back of my hand. Let's pause this. So, adding the two 8mm head bolts on the back one as well. I can't get hand tight on that somehow. I am just going to have to work that in slowly with a wrench. I've started this one in the front a little bit, but let me know in the comment section if you find an easier way to get this started and what tools made it easy for you. But I think a ratcheting 8mm tiny wrench will be the best thing to use here. That way, if you have tiny, big, medium, or fat hand, like some of us, you wouldn't have to deal with cutting the back of your hand even while you're wearing gloves. Okay, got all three 8mm bolts installed. The actuator is flush mounted. So here comes the moment of truth. There's nothing more disappointing than doing all this work and putting everything back together and come to find out that the part is defective. So what I'm going to do now is, while everything is still open, I'm going to start the car, make sure that I am getting cold air, because that was the problem before. And yes, indeed, the AC is working. I can now put everything back together. So stay tuned if you want to see the reverse order of putting everything back together. Otherwise, hopefully you've learned something from me taking this and installing it, that it would make it not as challenging for you. So first and first, let's put the glove box back in place. That is in. I took this trim out just for the sake of taking it out. It doesn't necessarily have to come out. It was an easy pop. So put that back on. That is on there. There's a tab missing in there. I think that was already broken off. So the next step will be to install the tray that I took off from the top, so that I can get the light under there for the camera to record better. So we'll take this, and that goes in this way. It slides in there, and two 7mm bolts connects that together right there, 1 and 2. So let's put that in. Let's find the radio, set the radio back in, and put the 4 bolts that holds the radio in. Let's turn this off. So before setting the radio back in place, of course, we're going to connect all of those connectors that goes to the radio. Okay, connected the big wire, the big harness to the radio, and the CD is searching for CD. Of course, there is no CD. Now the antenna goes right there. Once that snaps in, lift the stereo up, because I have the ignition on in order to give me space to move the gas selector out of the way. So this radio is making all that noise. So set this in place. There's a rail there that sits on. Now, of course, doing this one-handed is just wonderful. So find the bolts. One. Start it by hand. Put the one on the diagonal. Start it by hand. Put this one in here. Start it by hand. And the last one. Start it by hand. And then, of course, I would like to use a power tool to get this done. Start here. One, two. Get this done. And radio is in. And we have the airbag connected. Let's make sure any disconnected wire and harness here is also connected before we put it back. Now that all connectors are back on, get this onto the face and just align it well enough from the top. We started from the bottom. I would rather install it from the top. Oh, one-handed filming. Some of these retainer tabs that are supposed to be part of the dash trim may not come along with the dash trim when you removed it. So you're gonna have to pry them out by pulling it with a needle nose plier or some kind of a ply and pull it out, and then reattach it to the trim before reinstalling. Oh, one is installed. Now we'll pull the top one, that one on top there, and there's one in the middle there, and there's one on the bottom as well that needs to be removed and reattached to the trim and then pushed in. Okay, with all tabs connected, everything is back in, and the trim pieces are all back in. So now we now have AC, whatever the condition is with yours before, whether you had AC and didn't have heat. If you like this and this has been helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.